Alright, we're going to pull a 1-inch Harley wheel bearing. I've already pulled the first side and I recorded it and it went nice and smooth. However, I jiggled the camera all over the place and I don't want to give anybody a seizure here, so we're going to do the other side and try not to jiggle the camera as much on my flimsy table. So we have the bearing puller, as they call it in the instructions. I call this a collet. This is the other part of the collet. They call this a bearing expander. You have a nut and a washer that go on top of there. So this guy goes into the bearing, and on the first bearing you do, you're going to actually take this and you're going to take a hammer or rubber mallet and pop it in there. But so I don't jiggle the camera around, I'm actually going to take this guy and I'm going to just put it up through the other side of the bearing. So we're not jiggling. This is the other side of the collet. For this, we'll put this together. You're going to need a 3/8 Allen, preferably on a long socket, so you can put the nut on top of here and tighten it up. So we are going to insert this through the bottom, only because I already took one side of the bearing out and I'm not trying to jiggle the camera as much. So that little ridge that was on this bearing puller gets stopped by the back side of the bearing. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put the bridge on and we're going to rest it in between those rotor bolts, and we're going to jiggle the camera a little bit here. Tighten this up. We're going to put our brass colored washer on there and this 1.015 inch nut. I have a thing for hardware being the right size. This washer, and this is an 11/16 nut, which actually fits. So I have everything on there. I'm holding the 3/8 from underneath. I'm grabbing 11/16 for the top, and I'm going to put a ratchet on the bottom here, and we're just going to tighten this thing up snug to expand that collet and ensure that it grabs the bearing and doesn't slip, that little ridge doesn't slip off. Alright, so that's tight. We're going to jiggle again. Now, we need 2 wrenches. We need 1 wrench for this big 1.015 inch nut, and then we need another wrench for the flats on this collet here. Hand tighten that. So this is a 16 millimeter. As you can see, there's some slop there. This is a really nice snap-on 5/8. Still slop there. I feel like the 16 millimeter is a tighter fit, and I don't have a 39/64 wrench or a skinny crescent wrench to go in there. So I'm holding the flat and I'm tightening the nut. This thing is tough. And you're going to pull on this thing and it's going to pop. Tighten up the universal wrench here. Alright, so that was the pop. So the pop means 2 things. Either you actually pulled that ridge through the bearing, or you cracked the wheel bearing loose. I think we cracked the wheel bearing loose. Sorry for wiggling the camera, but I have to use a universal wrench because this nut is not a good size. And once you get the thing going, bear with me, we're working around a camera. It should be easy. Should start pulling out of that. And these wheel bearings have only been in this bike for a year, but it gets ridden hard. And put a new tire on it. And bearings are cheap. The labor at a Harley dealership is not. So why not buy the bearings and the tool and do it all at once? I assure you, this would be a lot quicker if I wasn't trying to film this and not shake a camera. And use a universal wrench, crescent wrench. So I haven't did a sneak peek, but if you wanted to, you could look down in between the fingers of that bridge and see if you're pulling the bearing. But I'm sure I'm pulling the bearing out. If you're not pulling the bearing out, you should stop, loosen everything back up, and readjust it, because that ridge isn't that prominent. And while this material of this thing seems to be pretty decent, if you're misusing a tool, you're going to wear it out quicker, and it's probably not going to work again after you get the bearing out. Other thing to note is the instructions say to lightly oil the threads of the tool before using it. Now it comes with shipping oil on it, which is more than adequate. I wiped it down with a cloth to make sure there wasn't any machining dust in there, and the threads on this stuff is nice. So we pulled that bearing out with no effort other than me trying to not shake a camera, and she came out nice and easy. So for 70 bucks, I like this tool. As you can see, this 16mm wrench is kind of jammed on this thing because the flat on this isn't machined correctly. So I don't know if that's supposed to be 5/8 or 16mm. I'm going to send an email to Pit Posse and ask them what the deal is, or if they can send me a 39/64 wrench to use with my tool. But for 70 bucks, this thing works great, other than this flat being machined odd and that nut being a cheap nut. So if you use this tool 2 times, it's paid for itself. So if you use it carefully, you'll get many, many uses out of it. If you don't use it carefully, you'll probably get 2 uses out of it, and this thing will be stripped beyond use. And then you'll be one of those people complaining. But you're probably one of those people